This is the first in our video series on certificate management using the BACCARI tool. As a review, the series contains three different scenarios: the installer as CA, owner as CA via email or some other file sharing, and the owner as CA via the web. So these range from basic to most advanced. The first scenario is not the most secure, but is likely to be the most common. So we'll start here. In this scenario, this installer becomes a trusted delegate of the building owner and is given permission to create BACnet SC certificates without further involvement from the owner. Let's see how that works. As you can see in this graphic, the owner is the creator and the keeper of the keys to the BACnet SC networks in the building. This makes the owner the real, true certificate authority. However, for practical reasons, the owner may wish to allow an installer to perform the actions of the certificate authority on the owner's behalf. This involves giving the installer a copy of the private key that is used to create the BACnet SC certificates. In this way, the owner delegates the certificate authority to the installer. Let's see how this works. We'll begin with the owner. This is the BACCARI tool as it looks out of the box. When you first launch the tool, and you can see from the About box that no configurations have been made. This is just the way you start up. So let's start by logging in as the administrator. But we can't because we haven't created an administrator yet. So first thing you do as a new user is to register. This will create an administrator user for the BACCARI tool. So let's call it owner. Full name is site owner, and we'll give it a password. Now, by registering it, the first user registered becomes the administrator. And you notice we now have some new tabs. This setup tab only exists for the administrator user. And the important thing we want to do, of course, is create a certificate authority. So let's do that. We will get to all these other options in other videos, but for the purpose here, we just create a certificate authority. Now, this is the most important part. This is the password for this certificate signing key that is used for signing certificates for your BACnet SC network. So don't lose this password. We will go ahead and create that. Let's see. And you can call it whatever you want. We'll just leave it as BACCARI CA. And now, because proper security measures are in place, the BACCARI application doesn't remember the administrator's password in memory. So at a critical juncture like this, it requires you to enter it again. So we click Make CA. After a second or two, there it is. Now we have a certificate authority, and number of certificates issued is 0 because we haven't created any. So all we're doing in this scenario as the owner is creating the CA, and now we don't actually want to make any certificates, but we want to export the CA for the installer to use. So let's just click the Export CA button. Now this will wrap the certificate authority key in yet another password. It could be the same password, of course, but this is the password you're going to give to the installer to import this CA into the installer's version of BACCARI. So we'll give it a password and export. It'll ask you where you want it to go. Notice this is a PKCS number 12 formatted package, which is a standard standard way of packing certificates and private keys together with an encryption password. So we will download that. And that is all we have to do as an owner. Now we're ready to give that P12 file to the installer. So let's start over again with the installer. We are now on the installer's machine, so let's launch another brand new copy of BACCARI. Notice that we haven't created any administrators yet in this copy. Again, the installer now will register as the administrator. So now he is a local administrator of this copy of BACCARI. And rather than create a CA as the owner did, we will now import the CA. Now, there are multiple options for importing for flexibility. If someone gives you a separate certificate and key file as two different files, that can be done as well. But BACCARI exports and imports the combined PKCS12 format, which is the normal way of packaging them together. So we will import the file that was given to us by the owner. Now we have to enter the password for that file that was given to us by the owner. Notice that the P12 file is encrypted, so it can be emailed freely, passed around however it wants. Nobody can use it without knowing the password that was used to create it. And again, BACCARI doesn't remember your administrative password from one moment to the next, best practice. So you have to re-enter it again to allow it to write some things to the disk. There we go. Now we have successfully imported our certificate authority, and this delegated installer now is ready to start actually making some certificates. I'll widen this out. We start on the Start tab. And we're going to create a carry file, which is the way of combining certificates and keys and instructions, everything together in one file. This will later be used in other scenarios where the installer will create this file and actually send it somewhere and get it back again. But in this case, it's all in one place. So we just create a new one. Here's the carry file contents. There's nothing in it, so it's telling you that there's nothing in it. If you were to review, it would tell you there are errors. Go use the Edit tab to correct. So we're doing that. First thing we do, obviously, is add a device. So let's add a device. The device number, this is the device instance number. It comes from your preferences. If you want to have a different starting address, do that, and it is auto-incremented every time after that. So you see, if we go back here and add a second device, then it becomes the next available number, and you can change that anytime you want. So port A is the BACnet SC port that needs a certificate. So we can either make a CSR or open a CSR. Now, it depends on how the installer's device works. If the device creates a CSR by some means, creates the private key itself, and presents a CSR to the installer, then that's the first scenario we will cover here. And the installer then just simply opens a file, and this is the one that came from either from the device itself or from some tool that the device has that creates a CSR. So he opens that from disk. The system will check it out, make sure it's okay, and it's ready to go. Our second device, however, is a different device, and it doesn't generate its own CSRs. It doesn't have a tool to generate its own CSRs. It requires you in this BACCARI tool to make up the CSR for it. Now, when you make a CSR, that means you're also making a private key. So when we make the CSR, it's going to ask you for a password to encrypt that private key, because we don't want to count on password protecting zip files or anything like that. We want the actual key stored on the zip file to be password protected, and your device will then unpack the key. So for this scenario, we're going to encrypt the key file. So this, now you see the tool created a CSR and it created a key file. This key file is encrypted. In the first case, the CSR came from the device or from the device's tool, and we just simply loaded it in. In the second case here, we created our CSR here right in BACCARI. So these two different scenarios depend entirely on the device that the installer is installing and how the particular device functions or wants to work. Now, there's other options here. If this device is a hub, we will say so. We'll say it's a hub. And if this device is a router between two SC networks, we can tell it that it's a router. And in that case, we would probably want to add a second port. But in this case, we won't do that. So we'll remove the route designation. Actually, let's make this device a router, and so we can add a second port and make another CSR for it. So now we've created a device that is marked as a router. Port A uses this request and key, and it's designated as a hub. This one is just a normal Well, since it's a router, let's go ahead and call this one a hub as well. So it can function as a hub if it wants. Now we are all done. This is ready to look at. If you click the review tab, you'll see that it just gives you a summary of things. Here's a list of all the things that we're going to do, all the certificates we're going to sign. No errors found on any of them. We can, at this point, download the zip file as it is, but there's no point in doing that because we are the authority, so we can sign it directly. So when you click the sign button, it's immediately signed. You see that it was submitted at this time, signed, and when it was signed. And now here is the file that we can download that contains our signed certificates. Now, if there are more notes than fit on this page, you can click this and it will expand to see that. When you're done with this, you can archive it or delete it. Let's download our file first, since that's the most important thing. So inside this zip file is our signed certificates. Now that we've done this, we will archive this, and you can see it on the Archive tab until you delete it. So what does all this do? Let's look at the actual result. Here's the file that we created and signed as a local administrator. Notice the structure is similar to what we created over here in the tool. We have devices and ports and markers as to whether it's a hub or a router. But we also have something new. We have these new files called operational certificates. And this is what actually gets sent down into the device. This is the permission. This is the operational TLS certificate that the device uses to prove that it has authority to be on the BACnet SC network. So let's look what one looks like. If you open it up, you'll see that this common name is device 1234. This is the device's name, and the issuer's name is our BACCARI CA issuer name that was created by the owner, and a bunch of other information down here showing signatures and all that kind of stuff. So now you see that this was the CSR that came from a device or from a device's tool, and we simply turned around and gave it back the operational certificate. In this scenario, as we saw earlier, we create both the key and the operational certificate, and these two together is what a vendor's tool would send down to the device in order for the device to run. So these are the two different ways a device needs to get its information. If the device already knows its own private key, you just give it the operational certificate. If it needs both the key and the certificate, that's what you would do here. Now, there's one final piece of this puzzle, and that is that in order for devices to trust other devices, this device, for example, says it's device 1235 and it's signed by BACCARI CA. Well, who's BACCARI CA? For a device to know this and check this signature out, it needs the certificate that matches BACCARI CA. And that's what is down here at the bottom. This is the issuer certificate that was put in here by the BACCARI tool. And if you look at that, you notice that this is self-signed. This is the BACCARI and is signed by BACCARI. So this, of course, would contain your site number. It's not, don't call it BACCARI. Give it a real name. But this is the certificate that is needed by all devices. So device 1234 needs to be given this operational certificate and this together. Those are the two files that it needs to operate on the network. And that's how carry files work. Copy of the private key to any other person or organization. The scenario we will discuss in this video provides for a centralized CA where the keys never leave the owner's control. Let's see how that works. In this graphic, you can see that the owner is the creator and keeper of the keys to the BACnet SC network in the building. This makes the owner the certificate authority. The installers exchange carry files with the CA. The file sent to the CA contains signing requests, and the file sent in response contains the operational certificate. This is what the BACCARI tool looks like when you run it for the first time. If you try to log in, you'll find that there are no users registered. The first user will become the administrator. So let's register. All right, now we are logged in. We have some new tabs, the most important one being the Setup tab. This is where we will go to create the certificate authority. To create the CA, you can either import a CA from another instance of BACCARI or from some other tool. For example, BACCARI exports CAs in the P12 format, which is a nice combination of key and certificate. But some CAs export themselves differently with separate CA and key files. So both options are available to you if you choose to import. However, for this demo, we're going to create a CA from scratch. So we have to give the password signing key an important password. This is the password that protects your networks. Probably should use more than 4 characters. Obviously, change your site name here so that it becomes your CA. This is not owned by BACCARI in any way. It is clearly for your site. And then because the BACCARI tool does not remember your administrative password from moment to moment, which is best practice, unfortunately, you have to re-enter your login password so it can make changes to the disk. So there we go. Now we've created a certificate authority. We have issued 0 certificates, but we're ready to get started. So now we've seen the owner's side of this scenario. Let's look at the installer side. Again, we start with a fresh copy of BACCARI. This is if you just run the program for the first time. Notice we try to log in. There are no users. That's fine. You can actually use this tool as a guest. You do not have to register or log in. However, there's some advantages to doing so, and we'll look at that later. But for now, let's continue as a guest. We say new file to create a new file name. You see it's a carry file. It's a zip file format. And there are no devices. It will tell you that. If you go to the review tab, of course, it will say there are errors. Go use the edit tab to correct. So we come back to the edit tab. Let's add a device. Now, here's device 1234. You can change that if you need to change the number. And it has one port. Let's make a simple device. And we were given, our device gave us the CSR. So let's attach it. We'll open a file or drop it from our file system. So this is the CSR that was created by the device or the device's tool. And it is checked out by the system and all checks out, status is okay. So we're ready to go. But for completeness of this demo, let's create a second device. We'll add another device, and this device will turn into a router. So let's go to the device and add another port. So now we have 2 ports, but they both need CSRs. Now this device is a different kind of device, and so instead of giving us a CSR that we can attach here, this device wants BACCARI tool itself to create the CSR on its behalf. So when you create a CSR, you also create a matching key. So in order to do that, since matching keys, since private keys should be protected, the BACCARI tool will prompt you for a password for this private key. This is the reason for logging in, because if you create an account, you can set this password once in your account and not have to do this every time. So now we've created a key and a CSR for this device, and let's do the same thing for port B. Notice it did remember your password for this session. As soon as you close BACCARI, it will forget that unless you log in. So now we have a BACCARI file, guest, we can review it. Everything looks good. This is what we're going to create. These are 3 certificate requests for the 3 different ports. And we will now download the file and send it off to our administrator. So now let's return to the owner's view of things. He's received this zip file, this carry file, in an email. So he brings up his copy of BACCARI and either opens the file or let's just drop it on there. Now you notice there are no errors found. Immediately takes you to the review tab. Everything looks good. He can look at the details if there's some reason to look at details, but if the owner is expecting this, then he can simply proceed to signing it. However, you notice there's no way to sign it. That's because we just launched the tool and we haven't actually logged in with the owner's credentials. So let's do that. And now the tabs change and suddenly we have a sign button here that shows up next to the zip file. So the owner will sign it, immediately signs. This is the file available for saving and sending back. And you can delete or archive this and after you're done. So let's take that and save it. And we now have a file that we can send back to the installer with the signed operational certificates. So let's look at that. This is very similar to what we saw before. However, notice in addition to the CSRs, we now have operational certificates included. So what does an operational certificate look like? Let's see. This says that this is device 1234, and it was signed by the BACCARI CA. Again, this would be your site name here, and some other information about the signature. But what is the BACCARI CA? How do devices know? How does device 12311111 know to trust 1235? These two operational certificates both say they're signed by BACCARI CA, but who is BACCARI CA? So an important part of what's included in the carry file that comes back from the CA is this, the issuer certificate. So if we click on the issuer certificate, we can find out that this is the BACCARI CA signed by itself, and this is what you distribute to all of these devices so that the combination of their operational certificate and the issuer certificate is what they need in order to operate on the BACnet SC network. Before we leave this scenario, let's return to the installer's view and discuss why the installer might want to actually register and log in on his local copy. Registering, for one thing, it gives the zip files a little better name than guest. But more importantly, it gives you a preferences tab to where you can manage the keys that are used for creating CSRs so that you'll notice if we now go and create a device, add a device, and then make CSR, it won't prompt us for the key because we've logged in and we've set private key in one place on the preferences. You can also change your theme if you would like and change the starting number if you've been assigned a different range and you want to work from there. So now when you go and you edit and you install a device, it will use your new number. So those are reasons to create an account and sign in onto even a local copy.